so much for coming. I am going to be telling you. Oh, is that okay? Yeah.
Is that good?
Whatever people want. Is it weird to be in the dark? You all can see this, right?
Yeah.
So I'm telling the big picture story of natural gas, mothers out front, and the leaky pipes, and sort of going through that, how we ended up where we are today. So just for, I think probably most of you know about mothers out front, but we are mothers, grandmothers, caregivers, people who have mothers, and people who know mothers. And we are all working toward a swift and just transition away from fossil fuels toward renewable energy. That is the goal of Mothers Out Front. And our vision, very much like the civil rights movement, is tens and eventually hundreds and thousands of mothers across the country involved in campaigns to address climate change at the local, state, and national levels. So this is where we want to be. And the big thing is, how does a group like the Brookline team or our team, that was the downtown team, make this happen? So part of what I want to tell the story today is how we went from, I kid you not, 8 women in a living room, and one of the women had read an article in the paper a year and a half ago that talked about the leaks. We knew nothing about the leaks a year and a half ago, and sort of what was the process we went through to get to where we are today. The first thing we did was get really educated. We invited people, from BU and from HEAT, from different Clean Water Action to come and educate us, and we learned a lot. And so I am going to tell you that overview of what we learned. And I am certain some of you have advanced degrees in climate science, but I'm actually going to start where we started, which is at the very basics. And so if you do know a lot more than I do, feel free to pipe in. So here is where we started, which is natural gas, beautiful green pasture. It says nature's choice for clean energy. This is an ad that I found on the internet, sort of talking about how fantastic natural gas was. It was a brochure, and the brochure sort of continued to say that the story of natural gas was that it burns cleaner, produces less CO2 than coal and oil, which is really great, and that's the story we are being told. That it is cheap and plentiful, and that it is a bridge fuel from dirty coal to renewables. And I am certain everyone in this room has heard this. And this is the story with the green pasture that people want you to believe. When you look into it, you start saying like, well, so what's the big deal? It's really great, all of this natural gas. So here's the real story. This is a fracking field. And the real story is that fracking and natural gas infrastructure are hurting land, water, and people. For those of you who don't know, fracking is that they put giant tubes into the earth. They pump millions of gallons of water and millions of gallons of chemicals down, high pressure, down to the earth. It shakes the rock. The gas comes up to the well, and they capture it in the well, and that's how we use natural gas. But I want you to remember that it looks like this, not the green field. And, at the same time, they're putting all that water never comes back up. I think only 10% of it comes back up. And it actually, all of those chemicals are now down in the earth or in our drinking water. There's this great video that you can look up on the internet that says, I think it's in Pennsylvania. The people are turning on their faucets and they could light it with a match and it would catch on fire. So that's sort of what we're dealing with. And here's the thing that's amazing. So we've had conventional gas for a long time coming from wells. Fracking is really new. I mean, if you think about it from a long time, from 2003 is when fracking took off. And now, 54% of our gas comes from fracking. So it's actually different from what people were getting on their stoves or in their homes before. Now we have fracked gas, which comes with chemicals and whatever else they're pumping in it. So now really basic, and I'm sorry if you already know this, but when we started thinking about this, we were saying, okay, so here's how global warming works. The sun comes in, it bounces out carbon dioxide, serves like a blanket over the earth. Natural gas is methane. So I want you all to imagine this. So if carbon dioxide is one blanket over the earth, then methane is 86 times more potent dioxide in the first 20 years. And that is why methane is so bad for the environment. Because what it is doing is that, and in the first 20 years it's 86, and people will tell you all the time, oh, in 100 years it's only 30 times as bad. But we don't have 100 years, we have 20 years, so it is a very powerful gas. And if we can just, yeah?
Can you explain what the first 20 years means? What does it do? Fade away? What?
No, so methane, so one of the things that happens with carbon dioxide is that it stays in the air for a long, long time. So even if we cut all carbon dioxide right now, today, you still have so much on it because it takes over 100 years to get out of the atmosphere. With methane, it actually, I think the life of methane in the atmosphere is like 12 years. So it is incredibly potent as it traps gas. Heat can't escape. Just imagine it's just like 86 blankets instead of, if you do it over a 100-year time frame, compared to carbon dioxide, it's only like 30 times worse. But it's still a lot worse if it's leaked into the atmosphere.
Yeah. It means that the methane is breaking down over time. And that if you look at the methane, a particular volume of methane leaked over 100 years, enough of it breaks down that it's only 30 times as bad as carbon dioxide in terms of trapping heat. But if you look at it over 20 years, which is we don't have 100 years to worry about climate change, it's these next years that are crucial, then it's 86 times more potent in terms of
this is sort of like the international consensus. You will see all sorts of numbers. People will say to you, if you compare carbon dioxide today against methane, over the first 5 years, it's 100 times worse. It's just, the shorter the time frame, the more powerful as a heat trapping gas. It traps heat more efficiently. So they're just thinking about, like, well, where is this natural gas? Where is it in our country? And the way it works is that it comes from gas wells or from fracking or from offshore. It gets goes through a processing plant. Then you see all these little compressor stations. Every 40 to 100 miles there's a compressor station. Some of it goes to generate electricity. Some of it goes to factories, and it comes here to businesses, our bakeries, our homes, some vehicles. And here's where the problem lies. It leaks everywhere. So it is true, if the methane, when it's burnt, like you burn it in your stove or you use it in your house, it's cleaner than carbon dioxide. That's why people tell you that as a gas, it's better than carbon dioxide. But if it leaks, it's methane. It's 95% methane. And that's when it's a really potent greenhouse gas. So across this country, there's methane leaking. So if you look at it from a greenhouse gas emissions, so we have, Brookline has it, Boston has it, the state has it. We have inventories that are looking at greenhouse gases so that we can reduce them. And here, in the Boston area, this is sort of what, if looking at it as 100%, this is how it breaks down. Sort of natural gas, you see the top, it looks like about 25%. Electricity, a lot of it comes from coal. Gas and diesel, fuel, and then steam. That's sort of the makeup. But here's the problem. Our greenhouse gas inventories, until very recently, have not included leaks. And now when they include leaks, it's a very small percent. But if you count leaks based on what we've looked at, it actually becomes the biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the whole Boston area. More than all the cars driving, more than all of the electricity, because of the leaks, because of the amount of leaks that are happening in Boston, in the Boston area. And then, going back to what I was saying before, we are working with somebody who is a scientist who's looking into the content. Right now, they are not required to release what's in the gas that's delivered to our homes, so we actually don't know. But when they've been studying different gas, there's carcinogens, neurotoxins, breathing hazards, hydrocarbons. This is like a whole conversation. You can have a 30-minute conversation on what the contents are of the frac gas based on the chemicals that are being pumped. And so we are right now teaming up with somebody who's going to be looking at household natural gas to see if capturing it, they can tell what are the toxic gases that are in there. So on top of methane, you have other gases. Okay. So here is what's happening in the Boston area. In 2013, Nathan Phillips from BU went around in a car with little sniffers, and they went through every single street in the greater Boston area, including Brookline. And they found 3,356 leaks, or about 3.9 leaks per mile. And each spike, the higher it goes, is that there's more methane per million than, so the higher the spike, the more the methane, the bigger the leak. So that study forced the state of Massachusetts to pass a law that said to the utility companies, if you have leaks, we want you to report them to us. Before that, the utility companies wouldn't tell us where the leaks were. So after this study happened, Mothers Out Front was not yet involved. This happened before Mothers Out Front showed up. And the reason why it's leaking is because we have cast iron pipes that are 100 years old. So they probably look like that, right? And they are sealed, they were sealed with jute. So can you imagine gas? Well, obviously it's leaking all over the place. So in 2015, now this is the study that we read. In January, actually February of 2015, Harvard and BU, again with Nathan Phillips, found that methane levels in Boston area were 2 to 3 times worse, and that there was enough methane leaking in the Boston area to heat 200,000 homes per year. So that's how much gas is being thrown. And this little statement at the bottom was what galvanized our little living room of 8 women, saying that's ridiculous, we have to stop this. So that is what's happening now. And as you know, gas can explode. This is a house in Dorchester that blew up in April 2014 and injured some people. I have been giving these talks around a lot of places, and everywhere I go, I query, gas leak explosion, the name of the town, and then I find very close to the town, or very related, a gas leak. It happens all the time. Listen to the radio. All the time you're hearing about a gas leak explosion somewhere. It also can harm human health. It aggravates asthma and other respiratory diseases. So methane, what it does is that it is a precursor to ground level ozone. And so, like on hot days, people who have asthma, on very hot days, it's harder for them to breathe. And that's how that happens. And then very importantly, it kills trees. And trees are one of the things that take carbon dioxide out of the air. So like at the time that we need trees the most, trees are dying. And you can see, this is Bob Ackley with Gas Safety USA, and he used to work for the utility companies, and so he now has his own company. And he's one of the people we work with to find the leaks. And so he can tell immediately, like that dead tree looks like a gas leak tree. He's putting in a CGI probe, and you can see that probably in the soil, the percent methane is very high. That's why that tree is dead. You, the town of Brookline, are suing National Grid because of all of the dead trees. And then the most incredible part is that you all pay for the leaked gas. So it's approximately $90 million a year, that 200,000 homes that were heated, approximately $90 million a year is included in your rates that the utility companies can charge you. There's a little piece on your bill that's called lost and unaccounted for gas. And in there, any lost gas gets just passed on. So there's no real incentive for the utility companies to fix the leaks. And this is the town of Brookline. So, as I mentioned before, a law passed that said utility companies had to report the leaks. This is data that the utility companies reported, and then Audrey Shulman from HEAT mapped them. So, the first time it was reported was in 2015. This is 2016 data. In 2015, she mapped 20,000 leaks across the state and put them in like this. And then in 2016, with some people in the room helping, they mapped, again, all of the leaks reported in 2016. This is 2016. The yellow are unrepaired leaks. In Brookline, there's 272. According to Audrey, yeah?
Go ahead.
According to Audrey, she said that Brookline is the second leakiest city in the state. If you look at it per mile, you have more leaks per mile. So Cohasset is the first, Brookline is the second. I mean, Boston's way further down the list. So you all have a ton of leaks. And then the blue leaks are missing leaks. And the reason why we call them missing is because they were in the 2015 report, didn't show up on the 2016 report, and were never reported as fixed. So when we contacted the utility companies and asked about them, they said, oh, they were probably repaired and we just didn't even, or maybe they're duplicates, and we looked at the data every which way, and there's really no explanation. I mean, like this.
I'm going to turn off the light so you can see it better, the blue
So
one.
this can't be a leak. I mean, a duplicate, right? Because there's no other one around it. And it couldn't have gotten fixed by itself. So, so anyway, so that is the incredible thing. So 1/3 of the leaks reported in 2016, I mean, there were, so like 6,000 leaks across all utility companies were missing that had been reported before and had never been reported as fixed. So it's pretty extraordinary. Basically, I don't believe there's malicious. I personally don't believe there's anything malicious. I think it's just that they're not managing this very well, and they just drive around and report whatever leaks they find. But there's not a management or an accountability for every leak. So just a little tutorial on leaks and how they're graded. There are 3 grades of leaks, and this is again created by the state law that mandated that the utility companies put maps. I mean, that they put out where their leaks are for mapping. They're grade 1, which is potentially explosive. Grade 2, that is a potential future hazard. That's usually within 5 feet of the foundation of a building. And then grade 3, which is considered non-hazardous. And the definition of hazard and safety has always been related to risk of explosion. It's actually not related to size. So you could have the most enormous gusher. If you had a leak in a field, and there's the biggest, most enormous leak, it would be considered a grade 3, because they would never have a chance of explosion. So I don't know if you've all read about that leak in California that went on for 4 months. Planes couldn't fly above it. 10,000 people were evacuated. That, according to our rules, would have been a grade 3 leak. And in the state of Massachusetts, the utility companies do not need to fix grade 3 leaks. They only have to fix grade 1 leaks within 1 day, and grade 2 leaks they have to fix within 1 year. 95% of our leaks are grade 3. The average age of a Boston leak is 16 years.
16?
16 years old, right. We had a birthday party for a 30-year-old leak last September. Got a lot of press. It was really great. And you know, amazingly, so we got a lot of press, and then the utility company fixed it. The 30-year-old leak, yeah.
And how do they decide on the grade 1 explosive? Is that after the explosion, or is that before the explosion?
No, they actually, you know, it is because it's in a building. So
is the leak from the pipe coming to the house or
Yeah.
the building? And
Yeah.
And it dissects along the pipe and goes into the house? Is that what happens?
yes.
Is that what
So well, not only in the houses, but it's also like, for example, in the manholes. Like if there's basically the way, if it's in a contained space, what defines an explosive leak is that there's a percentage of gas, and it's a pretty low percent. It's like 6%. It's not like 100%. It's a pretty low percent, and it's in a contained space. It can't go out.
So when they come by to your cellar and sniff around a little bit, they're looking for that?
Yes, and if you smell gas, they tell you to leave your house. We just had a gas explosion in downtown Boston 2 days ago. Yeah.
So you saw what happened in California was a grade 3 leak?
Yeah.
So what triggered that? Like, how does that happen?
So the gas leak in California was a mine, and it was a mile under the earth, and it was like a giant storage facility for gas, and it had like literally like a mile-long pipe up to the earth. And in the 1970s, the valve that would have sealed it off at the bottom broke, and they never were required to fix it. Somewhere between the storage facility and the top, it started to leak, and they couldn't fix it. It took them 4 months to fix it. And in that time, I think it was like the equivalent of 6 coal plants a day were being spewed into. It turned out to be 25% of all of California's greenhouse emissions per day.
For nothing. For a complete waste. Like, it's not like
Complete
someone's
waste.
driving somewhere or doing something useful.
It was a complete waste, and literally planes were told they could not fly above it. But the thing that's so extraordinary is that it's a gigantic leak, but because it's not explosive, I mean, obviously in California they tried to fix it. It was really hard. But here, the way our definitions work are not based on size of leak. They are based on, will the thing explode? And that has been, all our legislation to date has been on, will it explode? Does that make sense? So there's a really exciting study by Margaret Hendricks from BU, who works with Nathan Phillips, and she did a study where she randomly sampled 100 Boston area leaks and found that 7% of the leaks emitted 50% of the methane. And this is huge because what it means is they've now been named super emitters. This is really important because what happens is if we can identify the super emitters, we can cut the methane emissions in half, right? The issue is, of course, nobody knows how to find the super emitters because what she did is she measured 100 and then saw how much gas was measured very carefully, how much gas was being spewed out of each one of these leaks. But that's incredibly time consuming. And the utility companies have no method of, they do not right now measure how much gas is, the volume, that's the leak rate. They don't measure that, and they don't have any data on that. So they're only looking for explosion, they're not looking for size of leak. They have no method of doing it. And so what we're trying to do, which I'll talk about in a little, is figure out how to identify this. And then that last week, I read about a new study that just came out of Stanford, where wells, they have determined that 5% of wells leak 50% of methane emissions. So I think this is sort of consistent throughout the industry. If we could figure out how to identify super emitters, you could actually make a huge difference and cut half the methane emissions associated.
How did she identify them?
So I wish I had the picture, it's really cool. So she chose randomly 100 leaks,
Yeah.
and then she has like a tent that she puts above the leaks. Like she does like a whole area analysis to make sure there's no gas leak. So she can do it by a probe. And then she puts a tent around it and measures the flux of the air coming into that tent. So it's a very, very elaborate, because everything, it's like a patient. Every single thing has to be clean, so she has the exact area of each leak. And then she figures out how fast, what's the flow rate of it. And so what she was saying is that there is a huge magnitude. The super emitters are not, it's not like they're a little bit bigger. They're massively bigger than the others. So here is ready for the Brookline. This is Route 9. So this is with a driving car. You can see that not all leaks are created equal, and that maybe this could be potentially a super emitter. We don't know. But again, by driving on Route 9 is riddled with leaks. It is. If you don't walk on it, but if you walked around it, you would know that you can smell a lot of gas. And so, you know, the Brookline has super emitters, we don't know. And I think that's part of like the next step of what we're trying to do is have a study. Audrey from Heath and Nathan Phillips from BU have developed a study, and we're trying to figure out, can we figure this out fast enough to help the utility companies identify super emitters. So that's that. So now I'm going to get into sort of how are we doing that, how are we dealing with this from a Mothers Out Front perspective. So here's a really cute kid who wishes the gas leaks would go away. And so we could try that, but we don't think it'll work. So instead, we teamed up with a lot of organizations, and this has been really important. So first Heat, who does the maps, Clean Water Action, who does incredible advocacy, the Sierra Club, Boston Climate Action Network, tons of green organizations like the Emerald Necklace, the Brookline Green Space Alliance, Friends of Public Garden. Here's Nathan Phillips. So all of us, we meet every 2 weeks, which is amazing. The Springfield people do not meet with us, but we meet every 2 weeks and jointly campaign and decide on how to do this for Massachusetts, to be able to pass legislation, to be able to do stuff at the city level, and with the research, everything. So this is an incredible collaboration. And Mothers Out Front tries to work at every level. This is the Mothers Out Front sort of theory of change, and it's very much based on the civil rights movement. And the idea is that, yes, you want to advocate for stuff at the state level, we want to advocate for laws at the state level, but you also have to do stuff in the cities for that to put pressure on the state. And most importantly, you need people on the ground pushing their elected officials to do stuff and doing things to raise awareness. So saying you're passing civil rights legislation at the top, at the bottom, you're refusing to get on the bus. And so that's sort of where we, the community organizing teams, were hanging out here, doing all of the work that's going to rise. And so what does that look like? The community organizing teams, this is like you all, this is the Cambridge team. They tagged all the leaks. They met with elected officials, they organized around leaks. And I think you all did the exact same thing, right? And Boston is going to do this, I think, in December. But basically calling awareness to people. Like, you have a leak next to the house. And I gave a presentation in Winthrop, and the person in the audience was like, oh my God, that's my house. It was very funny. She just went to Winthrop from Cambridge. Anyway, so passed resolutions to support state legislation. Again, talking about how the towns at the bottom have to go up. For this legislative cycle, we were pushing for 2 bills. One bill said, when the roads are open, the utility company should have to fix the leaks. So right now, if it's a grade 3 leak, the roads are open, they're being repaired for whatever reason, you're repaving, you're doing the water, and there's a leak, and it could be a big leak, they do not fix it. The utility companies do not fix it. It doesn't matter to them because it's leaked and you all pay for it. So one of the bills was, if the roads are open, fix the leaks, and the other bill was, we don't want to pay for the escape gas. The utility company should have to pay for the escape gas. And our thinking behind that was that if they had to pay for it, they would fix the big leaks first, right? They would figure out how to do it, and they'd do it because they wouldn't want to pay for it. Anyway, so those resolutions, we passed it in Boston, and then it spread like wildfire. Between our allies and us, we got 37 cities and towns to pass resolutions. And I met with the Brookline team, I don't remember, March maybe? Or February, March? I don't remember.
February is before climate weeks.
Yeah, and I made this little presentation, and then within 2 weeks, you all passed the resolutions according to the state. It was very impressive. But we basically did this. We went out to towns and gave a talk and said, hey, this is happening, support us. And we got all of these towns we're all in contact with all of these towns, so anything that we do, we can work with them.
So what were the resolutions for you?
The 2 resolutions, one was, so these are at the state law level, so one was that the utility companies would pay for the gas, and the other one is the roads. So basically, the reason why this is really important is that all these state legislators at the state know that their town passed a resolution that cares about leaks. So when they get the bill, they want to vote for it because their people in their state, their cities voted for it.
So in Brookline, the Board of Selectmen passed the 2 resolutions, which then are presented to the state, but it also means that our representatives to the state legislatures know that Brookline passed these resolutions, and so they're much more compelled to vote for the state legislature.
But they're not actually enforceable.
No. All that we're saying is we care about this, please pass it. So all of these resolutions were saying, so this represents 35% of the residents of Massachusetts, right? So we knew, for example, we could meet with Speaker DeLeo and say 35% of the people want this, right? So that's the kind of, or with our state reps and our senators. So that sort of was at the bottom. At the city level, what we are trying to do, first in Boston, and then in the other 36 towns, is to pass an ordinance. And so we, at the same time that we were thinking about the state and what we could do at the state, we knew there was a high risk they would pass nothing. A lot of people told us they already passed laws 2 years ago, they're never going to do another one. So we started thinking, what can we do in the city? In the city of Boston, we have some incredible city councilor advocates that we've been working with. Principally Matt O'Malley. Anybody knows Matt O'Malley? He has been amazing. And so working with him, we are trying to pass legislation that could work within the city of Boston to help speed up how fast leaks are fixed. And it's very hard to do that because all of the utilities are regulated by the Department of Public Utilities and by the state. So they preempt anything that the town can do. So it's hard. You have to have the appropriate language to do it. And we are very fortunate because Conservation Law Foundation is working with us, and they have the smartest lawyers you can imagine. So they're helping us with that ordinance. And this is something that before I was going to I thought the next one was the ordinance, but here is Edith Bulos. was from the Jamaica Plain team, and she was testifying when we were trying to have a hearing. And this is my favorite quote. Tito Jackson, which is a city councilor, said, "I don't want my 8-year-old friends to have to deal with this. We will be held accountable by mothers up front, by mothers in the back, and mothers on the side. We have 360 degrees of accountability." The Boston City Hall is a circle, and the room was packed with those T-shirts. It was really, really fun. So Matt O'Malley held the hearing, invited the utility companies, and we all spoke on why we needed to have a Boston ordinance. And we are now in the process, you can't see this, but this is sort of what our ordinance is starting to look like. Of course, the legal language does not look like this, but this is what we are hoping that every town passes. And the way we are going to it is through, basically the purpose is to lower the cost and disruption associated with opening city streets by better coordination and repairs. And the way we can handle that is through permits, so we can get information from the utility companies and withhold permits. And so that is part of how we're trying to encourage them to better coordinate with the city so that when the roads are open, they repair the leaks. And also, better reporting, help with trees, the jobs policy, make sure that the people they hire are being treated fairly. Anyway, so all of this, if we can pass this in Boston, then hopefully can come to Brookline and be tailored. And then going up to the top, so that's at the city what we're doing. Going up to the top, there's 3 different things that we can do across the state. One is the Department of Public Utilities and putting pressure on the Department of Public Utilities to really think about leaks in an environmental way. Second is the state legislation that I already talked about. And the third is working with the utility companies. So here we are. We testified before the DPU. They decide what's a grade 3 leak. They decide what's a grade 1, a grade 2. They do all of the classification of definitions. So what we all went in July and testified about super emitters. All our allies, we all said, you know what, you have to include super emitters. You cannot allow grade 3 leaks to go unfixed. So then at the State House level, remember I told you we were passing 2 bills? They passed, one of them passed the House, only the one on road repair. The other one did not. And then at the Senate level, this happened, and then they agreed, this is what passed in July, basically that the DPU with the DEP shall establish criteria for the identification of environmental impact of grade 3 leaks. And come up with a plan to repair those leaks that have significant environmental impact. So this is huge because for the first time ever, the DPU has to think about leaks, the environmental impact of leaks. They've never had to do that before. They've only had to think about cost and explosion and reliability. So for the first time, they have to think about environmental impact. But the devil's in the details, because what does that mean? Right? So right now, the utility companies are proposing their proposal is very lenient in terms of what would be a significant environmental impact. So we're going to have to push, and it'll be sort of a push and pull to come up with something that defines some significant environmental impact. And then very recently, Governor Baker, sort of separate from what was happening with the legislature, said he was ordered by Conservation Law Foundation to sue the state and said, you have to comply with the Global Warming Solution Act that was signed in 2008. And so when he did an executive order saying, okay, fine, we're going to comply, one of the things he included was leaks. And so it's really exciting because the governor knows about leaks, the DEP knows about leaks, the DPU knows about leaks, and really 3 years ago nobody knew about leaks. So that's really exciting. And then at the state level, Mothers Out Front and the allies have met with the 3 largest utility companies in Massachusetts. And then HEAT, MBU scientists, I think I mentioned to you all, proposing a study on how the utilities can identify super emitters. And we are super lucky because today we have the president of HEAT with us. And so if you have questions about how the study works or what she's proposing, she is here. And then also HEAT and with MAPC, the Massachusetts Planning Council, recently released findings on the cooperation between 25 towns and utility companies. This is super important because Audrey, who did a lot of this work, figured out what works and what doesn't. So that then when we are doing these ordinances and this legislation, we can actually be doing it based on something that we know works. So this has been really awesome.
How did the meeting go with the utilities?
So they're all very different. The first was National Grid. Audrey and I met with National Grid, and we met with the VP of Pipeline Safety. Or she's really the person who decides what's going to get fixed and whatnot. And she's actually an incredible person, an engineer. And we came up with this great study, and we're all on board. But then it went to the lawyers, and the lawyers basically decided that we couldn't. I mean, that if we did a study together, they would own the data. We would have to sign a non-disclosure, and we would not be able to share anything we found. So we couldn't agree to that. That was National Grid. Columbia Gas has been very open. And just to say, National Grid, they were, the folks we were talking to were pretty open to working with us. Columbia Gas, the president, is really interested in solving this problem. So he has been in conversations with Audrey. So we're hoping that we can maybe do something there. And then Eversource has not been as open about it. And but they did say that they would be willing. So I guess they met Audrey and Mothers Out Front Cambridge, because Eversource is in Cambridge. They weren't super excited. They didn't really buy into the whole thing. And then Mothers Out Front Grandmothers really push, and I guess now they've scheduled a meeting with the president of Eversource. So we'll see how that goes. But the idea is that, it would be great if we could work together on a solution. But by the same token, you can't count on that, right? So you have to do everything else. And then just going toward like, well, what can you all do? And the first thing is absolutely every time you smell a leak, you need to call it in, because that's how you get it on the map. That's how they know you know. They have to come to you within an hour, even if it's a grade 3. It doesn't matter where you are, you should call it in, because that is how, reporting it and having people call is how we're going to get action. Sign up to receive an action alert from Mothers Out Front. I think there's one outside.
That's right.
An example, because tomorrow we have a hearing with the Department of Environmental Protection. They are doing the Global Warming Solutions Act hearing from 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. tomorrow at the Department of Environmental Protection. And every hour is dedicated to a different thing. Actually, if you're interested and you have the time, you could call in even at one. It says everything on the sheet, on the action alert.
Looks like this, and it's on the table outside.
If you're interested, you can hear it. You can also go. You could hear. And every hour is dedicated to something else. So one is dedicated to cars. One, I think, is the building. But there is an hour dedicated to gas leaks, which is really exciting. That's from 3 to 4, and then it's open for public comments. So anyway, but we have really important action alerts where we only send it out when we think we need people, and we either need to make a phone call, sign a petition, go to a hearing. It would be great if you signed on. On Saturday, December 10th, we are doing a statewide action to call attention to super emitters. We are super excited. We're working with one of the Howard Dean people who did all of the digital campaigning for Howard Dean campaign. I don't know if you remember, that was like very revolutionary. And that company is working, they're like a consulting group. It's working with Mothers Out Front on a campaign. And so we're going to do a pilot study on December 10th. And that is going to include some sort of local action across the state. So anyway, stay tuned. We don't know exactly what the details are yet. And then the last thing is that you should all join the Brookline super fun Mothers Out Front team.
It is super fun.
I know from past experience that, so when I started, before I started working with Mothers Out Front, I would see a video about the environment or a movie, and I couldn't go to sleep. Like I would have nightmares the whole night. And it wasn't until I got involved with Mothers Out Front and I felt I was actually doing something to be part of the solution that I could sleep through the night. So I strongly recommend it, especially if you can't sleep. Anyway, and that's it. So I'll just open it up for questions.
So Kathleen, do you want to say?
So we started 2.5 years ago, and we started tabling at events. Brookline, bike parade, the farmer's market, just because we're a new group. And joining our team is something that you can spend as little or as much time on as you'd like. So I think that's why it works for so many of us, because we have busy lives, you know, and like everyone here, I'm sure, and sometimes you just can't do more, but sometimes you can send an email, sometimes you can help out at an event, so there's lots of opportunities to get involved. We have coffees once a month to kind of highlight things that we're working on together and to meet new people who may have heard of this, but, you know, don't have an event that we have scheduled to attend, and so they just want to get to know our group a little bit. We, you know, we send out emails about events that may be coming up or things to take action on. It's a little bit different than the action alerts. It might be an update on what the team is doing. So we also participate in Climate Week, which Climate Action Brookline puts on. What are the dates this year, Tom? Do you remember?
I don't have the date.
Sorry, it's
Last
in
week of March,
last week of
the
March.
very beginning of April.
Right, it's not totally, the schedule's not set. So we participate in that. We're focusing on gas leaks, so there's a lot of things that are happening with other COTs in other towns, and we're trying to come together.
So
there's a lot of
And if you're interested in getting very involved, we generally meet twice a week by
every other week.
every other week by Skype, and
Twice
then
a
once
month.
Yeah.
twice a month.
No.
Twice a month by a Skype thing, and then once a month at a brunch on a weekend. So that's if you're really interested in getting.
We also do things like last year at Climate Week, we set out the yellow gas leak flag. So that's always something that we're looking
They're always
for help with. You could do a house party, which is a way for your friends and your neighbors or a book club or some group of friends that you have to learn about Mothers Out Front, but also not just our group, but also like the gas leaks and clean energy that we're working for, getting more people involved with. So.
And I would just add that it's not only gas leaks. Like I know Lexington just passed a solar farm. Like all of the teams are working on different things that are really fun and getting people to switch over to clean energy. I mean, like the idea is that we are a grassroots movement. Mothers Out Front is started 3 years ago here in Massachusetts, and now it's in New York, in Virginia. There's one that's sort of starting in New Hampshire. California self-started because they were so, that huge leak was what self-started the California. So I mean, I think Kelsey, who is the founder of Mothers Out Front, was saying that we just don't have it is growing so fast, and across the country people are really interested in getting active. And I think for a long time people felt they were alone in this and that there was nothing we could do. But I think that what we've shown is that you can do a lot, actually. That it's amazing the power of the people.
I have a question and a comment. I think you guys can fact check me on this, but if you don't know, Texas passed a law that did require the gas companies to pay for the leaked gas, which is one of the big legislative pushes that we're trying to do here in Massachusetts. It passed, and the gas leaks were fixed.
No, they were cut in half within 3 years.
They were cut in half in 3 years.
Yeah, and it also happened in Pennsylvania. So Texas and Pennsylvania, two huge natural gas states, passed that legislation. Yeah.
So that's how attainable it is, and it feels very inspiring to me to know that that's happened elsewhere. And my question is whether I think the image that I'm going to take away the most from this talk is the graph of the with leaks and without leaks emissions, or the impact on climate change.
Oh yeah.
And how
The percent, it's the largest percent of greenhouse gas emissions for the greater Boston area.
So I guess my question is, can that image be made available to us to?
Yeah, no, you guys can have everything. And Audrey Audrey, can you just raise your hand and say hi?
Yeah, Audrey, is there something you want to add to the conversation?
No.
This is Audrey Schulman from HEAT, who compiled all the maps.
Audrey is a complete visionary because she is always 10 steps ahead of everyone else. And so she was the one, so when these reports were first released, they were on 4 or 5 point font PDFs, not Google spreadsheets, not anything that's usable, and with like a magnifying glass. she went and entered all that data, 20,000 leaks, so that we could have the maps. So that is incredible. And then I think year 2 was a little easier, right?
Yeah, there's much easier ways to do it now.
Yeah.
So, you did say that Brookline is the second leakiest town in the state.
Yeah.
So that should give us all pause, right?
Right. So, but per mile, right? So per the amount of roads you all have,
Yeah.
you have the most leaks. Yep.
And also that, is it Brookline or Boston is the oldest pipe infrastructure?
Well,
Something like that?
yeah. So we have really, it's sort of almost like oldest in the state, but I think New York has, they brought DC. There's just a thing that came out in DC.
So-
They have like 5,000 leaks, don't they? The city of DC.
So if we pass legislation,
Yeah.
laws that say, while the streets are open, fix the leaks, can we at some point even go further and say we want new infrastructure?
So yeah, so the utility companies are working toward new infrastructure. They have a plan that they have given to the DPU that says we will replace all the pipes in 20 years, over the next 20 years. And so what we're saying is 20 years is too freaking long. No way. That's just, we don't want pipe. So 20 years, imagine a 16-year-old leak now is 36 years old in 20 years. So what we're saying is that's too long a wait. So absolutely, we think, especially if it's a leak-prone pipe, that there's like that Route 9.
Yeah.
Remember the Route 9?
Yeah.
That should be replaced. If it's a long, many leaks thing, it should be replaced. And then if it's a super emitter, absolutely, we should be identifying super emitters. And that, I think, is what Audrey is working toward, is how can we find a super easy way to identify an efficient, cost-effective way that doesn't require digging the street to figure out that something's a super emitter. And so there's some technology and some different things that she's trying to, that's what she wants to do a study on.
So I missed the beginning of the talk, but where did all that data come from, and how old is it?
Which data?
The 20,000 points of data, all the leaks?
They report for the year. The 2015, they reported March 2015, and that was for the year 2014, and they reported March 2016. The map that I showed you was March 2016, and that's for 2015 data.
But they were required to do that every year?
Yeah. That's
a
what
new
the
law.
that passed. Yeah.
That's a law that passed 2 years ago.
Right, in 2014.
And before that, they weren't required to report.
And
the
many
leaks.
states don't require that. So we're lucky because we have that. And the other thing about that data is that that's what the utility companies are reporting, but Audrey's work with Nathan Phillips and with Bob Ackley show that it's actually it's a third of it is missing.
Well, we're finding about 1.7 times, almost double the number of leaks that the utilities are reporting per mile.
And that's part of the work that you did with the 25 towns that asked her to do the work. They found that. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Is
So-
there any way to find the super emitters by metering? Like if you don't think what a person's using at the end and what you released, if there's a delta, is that how you find the super emitter? That doesn't work?
It's a great idea. It doesn't work because the meters that they have in households are very old and unreliable technology, and you can sort of imagine if the temperature's higher versus lower, the gas might expand or contract, and they're just not high-tech instruments. So there's big, sometimes they report actually negative amounts of missing gas, which means they don't know what the hell they're doing. Or, you know what I mean?
That's
Yeah,
helpful to know.
So I think we have different instruments, and the question is is there a correlation between them that we would be able to figure out?
Right.
Like those driving surveys, maybe with combination with the meter in the ground, in combination with looking at how much gas there is in the area around the leak. So looking at that.
As far as bits of data that go into your house, we have that information. We can sort of say the internet pipe that is at the top of your street has this capacity, and this is how much is going into your house, and if we're losing it in between, we know. But apparently we don't know that for gas.
Audrey, you can answer this question because I remember you saying something about how they know how much comes into the state.
They know how much comes into each sort of utility territory.
That's a pretty gross,
It's like a huge, yeah, and it's an estimate, it's like 2.7% of your gas.
Yes, according to the Harvard study. And just to be clear, the super emitters are on pipes under the street. We're not talking about super emitters inside houses.
Right.
Although they're very well, there might be.
So I was just thinking that you could narrow down where a super emitter was.
Well, that-
Because it's a big-
I think what Audrey is saying is that the reason you can't is because they don't have those, you're assuming a sophisticated amount and capacity of metering.
Right.
That's just
So
not
we-
done.
But
They meter as
yeah.
it comes into a territory, and then they meter at the home,
Right.
but they don't have meters every
In
street
between.
or,
Yeah.
right.
And a street could
Is
have
that-
10 leaks.
Right.
So then, I don't know, and also, it could be one pipe with multiple holes, or, they also, the utility companies.
That 2.7% or whatever it is, you said,
It's for
it's just amortized over everybody. It's not
Yeah.
because you're
Right.
area loss.
No, it's
So
the
even
entire-
if Boston fixed all of their pipes and we
Right.
replaced everything,
Right.
we would still be paying for lost gas because it's for National Grid's territory,
Right.
right? So it doesn't matter if you fix one pipe. But if we fix the super emitters, then that would reduce everybody's cost of
Yeah.
gas by 50%.
Right.
There,
So-
yeah, great question.
So, I'm sorry if I'm trying to repeat something. When you were talking about the lost gas fee on our bills,
Yeah.
is that if we read small print, would we see that it says you're being charged 5%?
I think it's part of your transmission, it does not, you
Part of the
cannot tell, it's not broken out like lost and unaccounted for gas. Because they, I know, smartly know that's a bad marketing term.
Is there a way, so I think remember like 3 years ago or something,
Yeah.
with our phone bills,
Yeah,
I believe it was, somebody found out that if you paid the tax of your phone bills, you were contributing towards the military at the time, so a lot of people out of protest didn't pay their taxes on their phone bills. Nothing ever happened, like nothing bad ever happened, it was a protest kind of withdrawal.
yeah.
I'm wondering if it would be worthwhile to start a movement.
No,
Just not pay
2.7%?
whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant.
And then write a little note, write a little note, dear NSTAR, but publicize. I mean, we have social media now, we didn't 30 years ago, and we make a deal out of it until we get the laws changed.
Right, I think that's a great idea, and so what we had a meeting on Sunday trying to come up with what's the idea that we do across the state, and so somebody said, let's not pay our bills, but then a lot of people, and it's like, wait, that's like, my bill is electronic, like I no longer have paper, so how, like the whole thing, so anyway, but I think it's a great idea, and absolutely we should have that as one of the things that we maybe do. I'm not exactly sure what it is that we're going to decide for this right now for December. Our goal is to pressure the utility companies, so that would be exactly the kind of pressure that the utility companies care about the money, obviously, but they also care about their reputation. So if we can be out there sort of saying, hey, fix the super emitter, they care about that too.
What's the motivation right now than what you said about Texas? I mean, so the lockout passed, and all of a sudden they're fixing all the leaks.
Yeah,
What's
it
the
is.
motivation? They don't have any motivation?
But right now they don't. No. Yeah.
What's the status of the implementation of the law that was passed in July? Is DEP or the DPU doing a rulemaking or what?
So the DPU is supposed to be in consultation with the DEP. Part of tomorrow will help inform that. Typically, these DPU hearings, initially when we met with the utility companies, they told us it would take a year, and now we've been told that they're going to try and slam it through, and so that it would happen within the next 6 months. The issue that's a little bit problematic with that is that for them to slam it through means it's not going to be super thoughtful in terms of whether it's really looking at super emitters and how they can figure that out. So we're trying to figure out how do we, all our testimony tomorrow at the DEP is going to be, we want transparent data, we want to make sure that it's something that we can believe in. Don't just take whatever the utility companies tells you to do. Because right now, the utility companies has a proposal on the table for how to measure super emitters, and the scientists that have looked at that proposal don't think it's real. They think that's just a way to say that it's a super emitter and that they fixed it, but they don't agree with it actually measuring super emitters. So You know, we're pushing so that we wait for Audrey's study. That's what, for Audrey and the BU study, we're saying, can you wait until we have a really reliable way to identify super emitters?
Susan, did you have a?
I guess one other comment. At that hearing that you mentioned in Boston for the ordinance, another thing that T.O. Jackson, the city councilor, said at that meeting that I thought was so powerful is if these gas leaks were water leaks, we would be freaking out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We could see them.
Yeah.
And they were gushing water all over.
Yeah. I mean, part of the problem is that.
There's no way we would tolerate this.
Yeah, we have a grandmother that says if gas leaks were purple, we wouldn't have a problem.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is people don't know about it. I mean, when we were putting up the flags last year around Brookline, we would have people come out of their houses and say, "What are you doing?" And we'd tell them, and they'd say, "Oh my God, I didn't know I had a gas leak here." And they would kind of get very worried about it, and it's something that's not visible to them, so they don't really think about it.
Could you smell it?
Yeah, you can. You can.
So all those people,
If they all reported.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Reporting really helps.
Yeah.
So let's have a couple more questions, and then we'll do a little wrap up. But
Well, the subject of reporting, in my neighborhood, which is right here by the town hall, there are a lot of leaks that have been there for years. National Grid has literally opened up the street around some of them multiple times, over the years, and they never seem to do a very good job actually dealing with them. Is there anything to say or do at the point when you're reporting something that will actually produce a different result? Because I mean, it seems kind of futile. I mean, they're around all the time. It's not going to take.
I know it is. I think that the squeaky wheel does get the what's the expression?
the grease. I think
I do believe that, but by the same token, like I have a mother who has a leak in front of her house, and she calls like every month, and they say it's a grade 3, we're never going to fix it. I don't care how many times you call.
When they come out, I mean.
Yeah, they will come out. They have to come out.
You may be smelling it again a year later.
Well, part of the problem, the reason that's happening is because, the joints that you saw are so leaky. So if you fix something here, it jostles the rusting pipe, which may create new leaks, and which also, jostles the joints, the seals, which break them up.
That's what the utility companies say. That like they fix one here, and it's just going to pop up there.
Yeah, they just need to replace the whole infrastructure.
So financially, from a financial, how their finances work, they benefit from fixing by replacement. They get a better return on replacement. When they do a fix, it's a 2-year cost recovery program, so it's not financially desirable to just fix. They prefer to replace, but the towns don't necessarily want you ripping up their roads, right? So they're not going to say, oh yeah, open up all our roads. So that's where like the coordination is so key, and that's why the ordinance is so important, because if the cities could say, you know what, National Grid, we're opening up for water. There's a new water line coming in. I want you to go in and replace that pipeline at the same time. Like, that would be fantastic. And the cities would save money. Everybody would save money. But that's not really happening right now.
So we're going to have to wrap up. I want to thank Ania. You guys.
I just wanted to point out that we do have a table out front that has our frequently asked question sheet with some really helpful links. One is that Audrey Schulman's website, heatma.org, has all the communities in Massachusetts mapped for the leaks, and what's really great, and the website's on the sheet, you can zoom in right to your street. You can show anyone you want what's happening, exactly where you want to look, and that was really helpful for a lot of us. And you can also donate on the site if you find that work extremely valuable and want to see it continue and move on to the next level. I highly encourage you to get involved. They're a great organization, and the information on there is even more in-depth if you want to just find out even more than what you heard tonight. So thank you, Audrey, for making that.
Thank you, Audrey.
I also wanted to let you know one other thing about the hearing tomorrow. I know it's short notice. If you can't attend, they are accepting comments by email. And if that's just like the one thing you feel compelled to do and get involved, that could be a great thing. There's a website link on that action alert sheet. It says action alert up at the top. And they're taking those comments until November 16th. So you don't have to rush home tonight and do it, but of course you want to strike while the iron's hot. But you can go ahead and send those comments in. Debbie had mentioned, could we send a sample letter, and I'd be happy to do that. If people want to, if you haven't already given us your email address, I'd be happy to include you in a, just write, sample letter or something. I'd be happy to send that out with some talking points to get your email, read and be really effective. That would be great. We have a coffee coming up on November 17th, and we hold monthly, as I mentioned, at Cuckoo Cafe. We have that just as a drop-in, and you're welcome to sign up to get more emails from us and get further involved. So thank you all for coming. Thank you very much, Ania.
Please have some.
Inspiring.
Feel free to have some refreshments while you're.
I know, go eat cookies.